Hi, welcome to episode 9 of the Business of Real Estate podcast with Lynn, Hoffmann, and Eric Johnson. Today we're talking all about open houses, how to make them better, how to make them work. And if you're a realtor who struggles trying to get the most out of your open houses, then stay tuned and listen in. Okay, so today, Lynn, we are talking open houses, and I know, this is, for some people, it's the way they get their leads. Mm-hmm. For some people, they struggle. It's almost like they don't know what to do in an open house, but it's one of the most, biggest, marketing tools that realtors have.
Yeah.
It's all about getting people in the house and then for them to see it, but not only that, for the realtor, it's also about generating leads and interest,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And what's your experience been like? When you first started, how were you with open houses?
How was I with open houses? Well, that was something I did extensively, and fortunately we didn't have a pandemic back then, so I was able to get lots of them. And back then, I used to go around to listing agents, the ones that predominantly had lots of listings, more than they could handle, and I would ask them if I could advertise their house and hold it open for them. And that was very good. But I was the one doing the selection of it. I actually targeted certain properties, certain locations, and certain agents where I thought I would have a good success rate. Mm-hmm. And I did. And it was a great way to talk to people and to get leads, to add to my pipeline. Also, it's a great way to make money because you're actually hunting at that point. You're actually working with people who are presumably more ready to buy than others. So, I think it's just one of the greatest things in the world.
Yeah. And there's pros and cons, obviously, to it. We will talk a little bit near the end about some safety issues. There's
Absolutely.
Some things you need to be aware of, but on the positive side, it's a great opportunity to get people out there, get them involved. I know a lot of people, I recommend agents getting out there a few days before working the neighborhood, getting the neighborhood excited.
Prepared, yes.
Right? And I know for myself, I know when I'm looking at a house goes up for sale on my street, I'm like, God, I hope somebody good comes in, right? Like, if you live in a nicer neighborhood, you want to make sure they're going to take care of their property, same as everybody around. You're hoping it's not no offense to punk rock bands, but a heavy metal or punk rock band is going to practice in the garage. But
you want to make sure it's the same vibe as the rest of the neighborhood. So like-minded people hang around with like-minded people. So working that neighborhood is a great way. Give them the opportunity to help choose their new neighbor. Exactly. And one of the first things agents say to me is, I don't want the neighbors to show up. Well, you're missing a big opportunity because neighbors want their loved ones, their family, their mother-in-law, their mothers to come and live close to them so they can babysit the kids, so they just have family close. So I never overlooked the neighbors. As a matter of fact, I did what you're just saying. I deliberately went out, made a special invitation for the neighbors, and I invited them at a different time. So if I was doing 2 to 4, which we'll get into because you don't have to follow the norms.
Yep.
If I was doing a 2 to 4, 1 to 2 would be my neighbors. And it would be the special time for the neighbors to come in and have a look. Because honestly, they're a great resource to buy. They have friends and family that they want in that area, particularly if it's an area where the houses don't come up that often for sale. Yep. So they really want to be in there. So I was absolutely going to address that. The other thing I want you to look at for an open house, it's a job interview. It really is. It's a job interview. You don't know why those people are coming in. They could be a buyer, they could be a potential seller, they could be looking for decorating ideas, but whatever the reason for coming in is, they have a reason for coming in and they want to do something. So you better be dressed for success, you better be attentive, you need to not dismiss them when they say, are you working with a realtor? And they go, yes, I am. Don't drop them. Don't stop talking to them. Keep talking to them. perhaps offer to give your business card to them so that they can have their realtor call you. Open yourself up for that relationship, but don't drop them. So many times when I've gone into an open house or even to look at a car or look at something, and people will say, can I help you? Or are you busy? Are you working with somebody? And you go, yes, I am. They just drop you like a hot potato.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. So stay engaged with them all through the process. So that's a couple of thoughts to get us started.
No, for sure, because we see it all the time. It doesn't always work out, and people, they stop working with a realtor, and then who do they go to? Well, they had a great experience at this event, right? Going to that open house. I agree with you. It really is, for lack of a better word, an interview, or it really gives you or at least gives the clients, the people coming in, the opportunity to see what you do. Right. How would you treat their house?
Exactly.
I want to go back to, it was interesting, you said, doing the open house, say 1 to 2, and having the other one.
Those are just suggestions, folks. Yeah. Those aren't hard facts.
It's not hard. I usually suggest people do it on a different day, say 2 days before. Okay. And that's only because if that person goes, and because we're so busy nowadays, and what I find is that, okay, if you went and saw an open house at 1 o'clock, you say, hey, it's on from 2 to 4, I'm booked. So I like having the agents I work with do it a couple days before, so it gives people a chance to, hey, friends and family, you got 2 days, you got to come see this, rearrange your schedule a little bit, but you got to come see this type of thing. But for everybody, it's different. However your homeowners want it, right? Because in reality, they are the boss, and it's their home.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about security in the sense of, because I know in the Workman Success program, when I'm teaching, they have it's interesting, they have this one form that they recommend people put on their doors. And it talks about that going through a home is a privilege, not a right.
Absolutely.
And so it's setting the tone and letting them know that they say only 2 buying groups at a time,
right, and
you must sign in because the homeowners want that. And I think it gets a bit of a bad rap because people think, people see it as just, oh, you're just going to call me and inundate me. But at the same time, we need to protect the homeowner's home, right? We've heard stories of people going in and stealing, going through cupboards and stuff they're not supposed to. And some agents just let them roam, free, and there's so many buying groups and nobody can keep an eye on anybody. And really, we got to go back to, we are representing the client, the seller, right? Not the buyers coming through. We're representing that homeowner, and we got to take good care of their property. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I've kicked many a potential client out of a house because they wouldn't take the shoes off or because they wouldn't abide by the rules coming in. So as the agent, you are responsible, not only representing, you are responsible for that house and what happens to it in that time frame. So if you think it's going to be a particularly busy one, then have 2 people. And if there's 2 or 3 floors, definitely have yourself and a buddy, somebody else, another agent from your own brokerage in there as well.
Yep.
You've got to be very careful. Unfortunately, women especially need to be extremely careful. You've got to make sure that you're comfortable with who comes in. We actually have a security method that we use where a person can actually make a call to our front desk to privately alert them to the fact that there's somebody in the house they're not comfortable with. So you've got to always thinking about safety. Never walk down in the basement in front of somebody else, but also never stalk a person through the house. That's not cool either. You need to give them enough latitude. However, you need to know where they are at pretty much all times. And again, in setting that up for your client, no valuables in the house. If there's valuables, put them in the darn safe. Do not leave money out. Do not leave iPads. Do not leave things out that can be picked up. We have had a lot in some of the houses in Oakville over the years, things stolen, valuable things stolen. They're very good at it. They distract you. Leaving a name and so forth, not Mickey Mouse, please, or Donald Duck. I've had those on open house. No, a real one. You have that opportunity when you set them off on their journey to go look at something and say, I'll join you in the master bedroom, or I'll join you in this other room in a few minutes. They know you're coming there. Go back and look at their name and everything. And if it's not right, ask to see their ID, please. You have that right. I'm a big fan of even asking to see picture ID. And I guess it's because of the price point that a lot of my agents work in.
Yeah.
You got to be really careful. Some people don't even get to visit the house unless they can prove financial
Yeah.
worth to go in. So you have that right. And as Eric said, it's not a right of the consumer to go through the open house. It's a privilege. And you are responsible for it. You are the one that will get sued if something goes missing or if something's damaged. So feel free to send somebody out and say, nope, you can't come in. Lock the doors if you feel uncomfortable. Like, do what you need to do. I would suggest if you get in a problem like that, call your broker manager for some guidance.
Yes.
And don't call 911 on an urgent line, but call in if you're having trouble. So yeah, very, very, very important subject.
Yeah. And I think the idea of having two people, one of the ways that I talk about it when I'm working with agents is having a table just inside the door. So once they come in, there's that, you can have that sign on the door saying, here's what's happening. If there's two people in here, the door will be blocked.
Right.
Please be patient. We will get with you.
Absolutely.
What that also does is build excitement, because all of a sudden you see a lineup of people outside the door, and people are like, oh, well, like this is the house we must see. So it does build a little excitement as well. And but the biggest thing is being able to keep track of who's in the home and making sure that people aren't walking over top of one another, but it is easier for you to keep an eye on things. I totally agree. And I think the other thing we want to talk about is when it comes to putting out signs. So I've seen some of our agents, we have a big inflatable Remax balloon. Some of our agents will borrow that, put it out. They put out flags, banners, balloons. I've seen all different things, but
not in Oakville.
No. Again, it depends on the city, because I know some of our listeners going, Oakville, just so you know, if you're not familiar with Ontario, it is a higher end community, higher priced homes. So it is going to be based on the type of home that you're doing. But there are things you can do to attract attention. We've had some agents that have done, one of our agents talked about doing a big food truck.
Yes.
And it was a small court, and it just made it a big event and had a lot of people come out. But the biggest thing is, how do we get people in there? And I've seen people where they just go with, say, one or two signs. And I got to say, Lynn, unless you're on a main street, if you're buried way back in there, you're going to need about 10, 12 signs, because people are coming from different areas and they got to find it. And so, I think it's important that we talk a little bit about preparation for an open house.
Absolutely. You need your route planned, and you need to have them at the appropriate corners with the arrows pointing the appropriate way. But what I do want to talk about, because this is really, really important, each municipality, each region, Niagara, Hamilton, Oakville, all have their own city bylaws for signage. We cannot, in Oakville, cannot use flags at all. End of story. So before you're going to spend money on that, know what area you want to use them in and make sure that you can use them. Another thing is the bylaw police will come by and pick up signs if they're left out longer than the window for open houses. Now, that didn't seem like a bad idea, and a lot of my agents said, I don't care if they pick them up. Let them pick them up. I'm not going to go and pay for them. But they've gotten smart now. If you don't pick them up and pay for them, then the entire brokerage is banned from any signs going out. So that was a new set of teeth that they put into effect in Oakville. So my caution is, be careful what you do and how you spend it, how you spend your money doing it.
So it's important for our listeners to make sure that no matter where you are, Canada, the US, you need to make sure that you are checking with your local bylaws and make sure what are the penalties, what are the any restrictions, that type of thing, and making sure you're picking up those signs.
Pick them up when you're done. Don't leave them out on the street. Neighbors complain about it a lot, and you don't want neighbors to complain about it. So that's very important. Your idea about the food truck is great. That's had some really good success. Some people even have some entertainment and things like that. There is no end of things you can do to attract attention. It depends on the price point of the house, the lifestyle of the house, how you're going to position that, and what you're going to do for it. And again, what the city and the area you're in allows you to do. So all good ideas.
Yeah, I've seen DJs, I've seen
Yes.
people have live music.
Clowns.
And like you said, it depends on, so again, when we talk about preparation, what you want to do is make sure, take a look at the neighborhood. What kind of neighborhood is this? What type of people live in this neighborhood? What would these people like?
Right.
You're not going to go very high end and go to, this real three-piece like mini orchestra, and you're going, this isn't the home for it.
No,
right?
no, exactly.
So you want to match that up, but it is important to look at how are you going to promote it. So are you going to go out and knock doors? So I usually recommend bare minimum is 10 houses across the street, 5 houses either side, and then 10 houses behind the house if there's a street behind it. But you can do more, but I said that's the bare minimum. I don't like minimums, to be honest, so I encourage you to do as much as you can, but that's the type of thing where you go around, knock, you can create, I call the neighbor open house a VIP open house. That's what I call it. And inviting them out and having some information that you leave with them. As you said, looking at the routes coming in and out. So what are the major roads that people would take to get to this open house? And then figuring out where your signs need to be and try and limit the number of turns. Like, we don't want them taking like 15 turns to get there.
No, and we all have GPS now, which is far better
Yes.
than it was back in the day. But that means you've consciously made a decision to look for that house and you know that house is open. What you're talking about, Eric, is for the people who spur of the moment see a sign. I've done this a million times. Been driving somewhere and see an open house sign and the car does a U-ey and goes back to look at it because I like that neighborhood. So there's the two things you're doing there.
Yes.
One of the fun things that a lot of people in the major cities do, and in our case Toronto, they'll have open house signs by a subway, or they'll have their open house positioned to start when the trains come in or when the subway comes in, so people can do the looking then. So again, the time of it, the type of people you invite, all dependent on the lifestyle of the area and how that forms. Some areas let you do open houses from 10 to 12. Again, check your city bylaws and make sure you're okay with that, but don't stay sort of in this cookie cutter position. You're in a great position to make those decisions for your client. And of course, you've got to ask your client what they're comfortable with, whether you can serve some light beverages or things like that, if you can have some appetizers and hors d'oeuvres, again, depending on, food truck, appetizers and hors d'oeuvres. Depends on the lifestyle and so forth.
People love free food and drinks.
Absolutely. If you want to bring people out, put some food out and good food out, or have, I know this is corny, but it does work. I sold one of my houses, my own personal home, in like 15 minutes. The people walked in, it was Christmas. It was decked out to the nines, beautiful Christmas. It smelt gorgeous inside. Literally, they walked in, walked out. Our daughter called us and said, "Mom, I think they're buying the house." I said, "What? It's been 15 minutes." They bought the house that night, way over asking, and this was a long time ago. So all of those sensual things, those sensory things, people pick up on that. So don't be afraid to do something nice, maybe have some cookies or some muffins, or just make it nice and make it feel comfortable and welcoming. People buy emotionally, first of all. They buy emotionally and then they justify after logically. So you got to get their emotions going during that time as well. And talk about the story of the house. Talk about the story of the house that you're in. Who lives in there? Not to give detail, but is it a family house? Is it the people are downsizing? They're going to travel around the world? Whatever. Paint a story of that house for the new family coming in, because that'll have a bearing on their emotional take on the house as well.
Oh yeah, I mean we've heard lots of stories. People baking cookies or
sure.
apple pies because it's an amazing smell. And I love what you said about stories, because one of the things I've always said, and you guys will probably hear me repeat this throughout different episodes, but stories sell, facts tell.
Exactly.
And so the idea is when you going through a house, telling a bit of a story, but building up that emotion, as Lynn said, is I want to show somebody, I want to tug at that emotion. So if I'm going through with an elderly couple and they're, we talk a little bit about their grandchildren, they say it's like, this is more showing a house versus say an open house, but you still have a bit of that. If you ask a couple of questions, it's, can you not just see yourself playing with your grandchildren
the
in
swing
this
set
backyard.
in the back that they
and-
clearly don't need, but the grandkids could need.
Yeah, and
exactly.
so it's not just pointing out, well, there's this and there's this and there's this. Like,
No, please.
It's not just that, can you see that granite countertop in that kitchen and those cupboards? It's like, no, can you not see yourself entertaining people? So you want to build those emotions and get them, finding out what they like and what they're looking for, and then building upon that and telling a bit of a story.
Right.
As opposed to just pointing out this, that, and the other thing.
Please don't do that.
Right?
Please don't walk around the house and go, this is the bedroom, this is the kitchen, stating the absolute ridiculous obvious. So 2 things about that. I'll start with my favorite line to close when people are walking through a house. Can you see yourself living here? Can you see yourself living in this house? You'll get a yes or a no. Maybe, but can you see yourself living here? And the other thing that I think we'll touch upon here, but the other thing that's absolutely critical is you need to know, whether it's your listing or whether you're holding the house open for another agent, you need to know every detail about that house. Please do your homework and your research and be prepared about the neighborhood.
I was just going to say, not just the house, the neighborhood.
That neighborhood, that community, what's going in over there, what's going on over here, why people are moving into the neighborhood, what the stats are for moving. Is it a neighborhood in transition, or is it transitioning up? Is it declining down? What the price values are historically.
Yep.
I mean, literally everything. If it's got a safe room, if it's got a wine cellar, if it's got irrigation systems, if it's got a smart house where everything is computerized. You need to know everything about it. Now, in the event that you don't know, sorry for interrupting, but if in the event that you don't know, then you're always going to say, I don't know, but I'm going to get you that information right now. And then you get on the phone and you find that information out. You always have to act, while the iron's hot. You gotta go with the flow when they're hot at it, but you need to know everything.
I was just going to say, you also need to know how to operate things. So if it is a smart home,
Yeah.
you damn well better know.
Yeah, better know.
Someone says, well, how does that work?
I
don't know. So because if it looks if it's complicated for you and you don't know how to work it, oh geez, like there's going to be a lot of people go, if they can't work it and they know this house, how am I going to be able to work this? So
Precisely.
Really get in there and practice beforehand. Get to know the light switches. I think that's important. People, you should have all the lights turned on, but if somebody asks, you need to know where the panel is. You need to know where key things are in the home. And I want to go back to, you were saying, can you see yourself living in this home? Mm-hmm. My big thing is when somebody is going through a home, and I've seen this, when I've bought homes, I always pay attention to other realtors, but I want them to walk in first.
Yes.
If I walk in first, so there's a mindset here, and it's very subtle, and you don't realize you're doing it. But when I walk through, you're coming into my home, versus I let you go first. It's your home. I'm following you. Mm-hmm. You're taking me through. You're guiding me on this, and you do that just through some words. And hey, where do you want to go first? Well, it's right up this way after you. And have them go, so they're not looking at you, they're looking at the home, and they see themselves coming through their next home. Yeah. And I think that's important, is that we have to allow them to
experience the home.
Experience it. Not my, I don't want to make it seem like it's my house.
You don't want to be stalking them, and that's why I said a little earlier, you greet them at the door, you get some information about them, and you give them a general overview of the house and say, just take a walk through. I'll meet you in the master bedroom, or I'll meet you in the recreation room, or I'll meet you in a minute, and let them go through an experience. So you're absolutely right. They need to experience it themselves, because what they're trying to see is if they could see themselves living here.
Yeah.
And that's also to the point of how you prepare the house as well. So you definitely should go ahead of time. I got to tell you, one time when I was really brand new, I had the opportunity. I really liked this house that this agent had up for sale. And he offered 3% to the cooperating broker that brought the deal. So I called him up and I said, I'd like to hold that house open for the weekend if I can. But I said, there's just one thing. I've been through it. It needs some cleaning. And it needs a little bit of fluffing and some stage. Just a few things, not a big deal. He said, sure, knock your socks off. So I went with bucket and pail and cleaners in hand, and I cleaned the house myself, and I staged the house, and I did everything I could, got it all ready. I had it for 2 days, and I sold it that weekend at 3%.
There you go.
So it's how it's prepared as well. You need to know where the light switches are. You need
Yes.
to know where the carburetor is. You need to know all the different things about the house. And it needs to be clean. And if the homeowner does not want to leave it clean and the listing agent doesn't want to leave it clean, then get permission to clean it. Very, very important. All the lights are on, some fresh flowers, something nice smelling in the house. All of those things. Those are how you make a profitable open house.
And I think the other thing we talk, it's about preparation, is having a checklist. So I believe that, anything you do more than a couple of times, you need to systemize it, automate it if you can. But my systems are all about checklists. And so you want to have that checklist, and you can have one that you give to the homeowners. You can have one for yourself. So the idea being that, so before the open house, you may have the homeowners and say, okay, we need to check this. When you get there, you want to walk around the house. Is there any garbage laying around? Anything that needs tidying up? Make sure that if they have blinds, are they dusted? Like, the last thing you want is somebody
Do they
opening
work?
up. Well, do they work? So if we got to figure out what, and that's the other thing, is ask the homeowner, especially if you're filling in for somebody. It's not your listing. You want to know, is there anything that doesn't work? Anything that I should avoid? You want to ask that other agent, the listing agent. But having that list so that it's consistent. Every time you go through an open house, you host an open house, you want to make sure, okay, this is done, these lights are on, this is clean, that's clean, I've checked this, I've checked that. Everything is going according to your system.
Right.
And part of that is also, when you look at marketing a listing, and I'm going to take it a step back from just the open house, but I encourage all of my agents to make sure not only do you have a budget for your overall business, but you have a budget for marketing a listing. And part of that budget should include the open houses. So what are you including? So if you are going to do cookies, or you're going to have, I have this much to spend. So if you're bringing in a DJ, or you're bringing in, food and snacks, whatever, make sure you have that in your budget, because it's amazing how you could do so many open houses. And especially if you're just starting out, this is really for the brand new agents, is that it's going to take a while to get your first home. So if you're doing all these open houses and you're spending all this money, but there's no money coming in, after a while you're like, oh man, I can't keep doing this. So really if you're new, especially if you're a new agent, set a budget.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about a lot of things here. We're not saying you have to do all of these. We're just saying here's some different ideas, but make sure you don't overspend.
Yeah.
Right? And obviously,
Soap and water doesn't cost a lot of money.
No.
Neither does fluffing pillows.
No.
So, as I said, when I started, I did not have a budget to spend, so it was pretty simple stuff. But I just want to go back and just reference one thing you just said. So when you were saying the agent would talk to the homeowner about the things, that's great if it's your listing.
Yes.
Do that. If it's not your listing, you're going to have to go back to
the
agent who has listed it and ask them. And some of the other things that I would ask on my little checklist, have any repairs been done to the house? So this is, you're asking the listing agent, or you're asking the homeowner, depending on your role. Any repairs done? Oh, okay, so you've had the basement caulked and sealed and stuff. Do you have the invoice for that? Perhaps we'll leave that in a binder on the table so people can see that up front. Any upgrades that you've done that are of significant value? When were they done? Who did them? Things like that. So the more information you can find out about the house, and especially I always tell my agents that if there's been work done in a basement, or if there's been some stuff that's very obvious that it's been done, have the receipts. If they've got warranties with them, put the warranties with them. Have those pieces of paper available so everybody can see them. There's never a problem if you're proactive and show people things, but God help you if they find it first and then you have to go back and explain it later. So really incumbent on you, whether it's your listing or you're borrowing the listing, to make sure it's done. And FYI, vacant houses are just as good too. So vacant houses work well too. As long as you have a list or a mechanism to know everybody that came in that house, so you can follow up with a phone call at the end of your open house day, or even on the Monday. Follow up with all the people that came through the house, if they've given you permission, of course.
And I think that's important. Let's, we've talked a lot about going through, preparing and taking people through, but it's also the post. So as you said, having something, a lot of people will use a sign-in sheet, but there's a lot of apps out there. Remax has an open house app. There's Open Home Pro. There's a number of other apps. You can take an iPad Pro, you can have it there. The nice thing is, they just click and a couple questions each page. And it just gives you a little bit of info. Where did they find out? That's the other thing you want to make sure is your sign-in sheet, if you say, hey, how did you hear about it? And that's what I love about these apps is it'll ask their name, it'll ask contact information, it'll ask if they're working with a realtor, who that realtor is.
Permission.
It'll find out how they found out about it. Was it through just the sign? Was it something on social media, or was it another realtor or a friend, whatever? Because you want to know if I have a number of open houses and I had a lot of buying people through, I want to see where I should focus most of my spending and most of my efforts. Because if everybody's coming through social media, I got to double down on social media. And so if it's through the neighbors, then I got to make sure I really work the neighbors in some of these places. So, but the biggest thing is that follow-up. And I think a lot of realtors drop the ball because they wait too long. And the simple fact is that if I'm interested in buying a house,
They move quicker.
I'm not just looking at one house. We've gone out and we've done so many open houses. And so I know a lot of our realtors will follow up within 2 hours. Just to touch base, just thanking them. It's not a sales pressure or anything like that. Hey, thank you for coming out. Maybe letting them know about some other homes that are similar to this one, maybe if they weren't aware. Again, and it's just following up and thanking them, but being in touch. Because as you said at the beginning, this is also an addition. Because now I want to, if I'm a homeowner and I came through and I'm going through open house, I'm not working with a realtor, I'm looking to see how you do your job.
Right.
And if you are attentive and you're reaching out and you're hustling and you're pulling out all the stops and you're doing things to protect that homeowner's home and their belongings, I want to talk to you. But if you just kind of, go ahead, and nobody's checking in on me, and I'm wandering around doing whatever I want, and I don't hear from you, and it's like, why would I want you to ever represent me selling my biggest investment?
No, you
So
wouldn't.
I think, it's important to do timely follow-up. I'm not saying you have to do within 2 hours. I just said some of our agents do. Some do by the end of the day, some the next morning. But the important thing is you need to follow up.
And before you follow up, you need, on whatever app you're using or pencil and paper you're using, you need to ask permission to follow up. And that's where you might say to them, please sign my sign-in sheet, give me permission or not to follow up with you via email, or how would you like to be communicated with? And then you follow up in that method. You've got to make sure you can follow up for sure. But you're right, people move at a faster pace than we think they're going to. If they're seriously out there looking to buy, their pace will escalate faster than what you think. So don't wait long. Most important is you follow up. To your point, a seller has one house to sell, a buyer has many, many things to sell. So if you're doing a 2-story cookie cutter detached 2-car garage and people show up in there, don't think that that's necessarily what they're going to buy.
Yep.
They may not. They may be looking at other things. They may have $1 million to spend, but they can spend it on a bungalow, a 2-story, a condo, a townhouse. They can spend it a multitude of different ways. So again, don't be afraid to know what's in that neighborhood, or any neighborhood if you've got enough time to do your homework right. Don't be afraid to know what is out there in a comparative price point to the house you're standing in. So what the other options are. I'm standing in a $1.5 million house. But you could buy this for this, or this for this, or this for this. There's other options. And I think just knowledge is power, and showing people that you're not just stuck in one spot. You've got other things you could tell them about, other interesting information. They're usually happy to say, if you got other stuff to send me, that'd be great. Here's my number, and you can follow up. And you'll know very quickly whether they meant that or not. But again, don't be disappointed if it's 4 days. I mean, I finally followed up on a vacant house I showed, and 4 days later, and the woman had come in the house and she'd run out of the house so fast I didn't really get a chance to talk to her. As she's flying out of the house, I said, "Did you sign? Did you sign?" And she said, "I signed." 4 days later, I followed up with her, and I ended up selling her a house and listing her house, but it was 4 days later. So it's not too. Don't just because you didn't do it the first 24 hours, don't think you've got to. You don't give up.
Yeah.
Still follow up. Okay.
Some follow-up is better than nothing at all, because you
100%.
never know.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing, you want to make sure that you're just have a regular conversation, even if they say they are working with another realtor, and just find out, what it is they're interested in.
Yep.
And I tell a story of, I remember this one agent saying one of the people that came through his open house forgot their purse. Mm-hmm. And they come back and they get it, and it was at the end, and he's just having at this point it's just regular conversation. And what ended up happening was they just exclaimed, we going through and don't think really we would prefer a bungalow rather than the 2-story, which this home was.
Right.
And they really liked the home across the street. So all of a sudden he makes a couple of calls, and he arranges to get them a bungalow. And I can't remember if it was in the one across the street or another one, but he did get them the type of house. And so it's really just a conversation, because I think, like you said, people come in and you're going to pigeonhole thinking they came into this house because this is that type of house they want. They may be just scoping out what's available in the neighborhood. Especially if it's I want to go back. Also, you talked about, upgrades, because if it's in a subdivision, I may want to live in this subdivision. I want to see what some of the homes are like. Mm-hmm. And so I go check out a couple of homes. But so that's why it's important to find out exactly what they're looking for. But at the same time, when you mentioned about upgrades, if I'm going through a number of homes, it's important for me to let people know, like a lot of the homes, this is what a lot of people have, but we did these and these upgrades. Mm-hmm. We did these upgrades. And so it's important to let people know that why your house or the house you're selling or doing the open house for is different than the others.
Yes.
And why you want to buy that one.
Right.
But it all comes all back to conversations.
So I'm gonna drill down a little bit on the conversation. So first of all, the best way to find out things is to listen more and talk less. So listen more, talk less, because what you're listening for is motivation. Are they moving because of taxes? Are they moving because of schools? Are they moving because they need to be near the mother-in-law for babysitting purposes? Listen for the needs. And the only way you're going to find out what the real needs are is to listen, actively listen to what they're saying. Yep. Get that motivation. And then, just like you said, you can take them to the house they really want. I've done this myself. I've started out looking for a bungalow and wound up way off the mark from what I looked at, right? People are drawn to other things for other reasons. It's the best value, it's a better area, whatever. So again, seller has one house, buyer has 100 opportunities to buy. So you've got to listen for what they really want. They say they want a big backyard for the dog and the kids. They want to be on a quiet street, okay? But you got to remember, that might change as they become more educated.
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about, Eric, is you're saying the more educated that consumer or client becomes, the better choices that they can make and the better you can help them, because now you're drilling down to what they really want. Only way to get to that is to listen, not talk, and start telling them about all the things they don't need to hear. You want to find out what they want in a house.
Exactly. And it's almost in some cases they're just doing market research. What's available? 100%. Right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of buyers don't necessarily really know what they want. They have an idea, and then they start looking around and going, I thought I wanted that.
That's where that phrase comes from, and it's an old phrase. So for those of you that are old like me, buyers are liars. And that's a real old phrase. And buyers are not liars.
Nope.
Buyers just don't know what they want until you help them get educated and help them figure out where their lifestyle is. And we got to remember, and we'll talk about this in a bit, you've got two of them usually. You've got two. And they each have different ideas and different things. So different wants. So you've got to kind of see if you can blend that together as well to add to a complication. But the big thing is just to listen.
Have that conversation. Yeah. So listen, guys, when you're out there, You're doing those open houses, as we said, just a bit of a recap here. What you want to do is make sure that you've set yourself some budgets beforehand. You know how much you're going to spend. You're going to know what you do. Have your systems, your checklists. This is what I do to prepare for an open house. This is what I'm going to do during the open house. This is how I follow up. All parts of it, right? So pre, during, and post. Have that all planned out for yourself. What is your plan? Look at the different neighborhoods, study the neighborhood, study that house. If you're doing an open house for somebody else, ask questions, find out what you can about that home and how you can help sell it. As Lynn said, people buy on emotion, they justify through logic. So use some of these things, allow them to go first. Use certain language that evokes emotions. Make sure that you take care of that property. Again, you are additioning. You got to look at it as an addition for potential new clients that are coming through. And at all times, be safe. Highly encourage you to do an open house with a partner, with somebody else. Get another agent to help you out. Not only does it help on the safety side of things, but we're in a period right now as we are recording this episode. I have some agents in certain areas in our region where they're doing an open house and nobody's coming through. There's some areas where there's maybe one buyer comes through, sometimes none. So having somebody there also helps pass the time away, and you have somebody to talk to. But always be there, be early, get things set up, and be safe. And anything to add to the wrap up here, Lynn?
Yeah, everything you said is spot on. You're looking to add people to your pipeline, and also you're looking to make some income faster. This is a way to generate income and generate fresh new people into your pipeline. It's a great opportunity. I think it's a great way to spend a couple of hours, but again, if you're going to spend 2 hours of your life on a weekend, make it work for you. Make it worthwhile if you're taking the time away from your family. Don't sit there and read a book, okay? Be engaged, do your job, and I think it'll work out very well for you all.
Awesome. So listen, everybody, please, if you like this podcast, subscribe to our podcast, hit like. We'd love to have comments. We love having some feedback as we go through this. This is our first podcast, I'll be honest. So, we're learning as we go, and we hope you're enjoying it so far. But we look forward to the next episode on the Business of Real Estate podcast here with Lynn Hoffmann and myself, Eric Johnson. Have yourselves a great day. Take care.
Thanks.